Hi, my name is Rabbi Maimon Pinto.
And I'm Chazan Daniel Ben Lolo, and we both are from the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue
of Montreal. We welcome everyone to this beautiful program with Ms. Khedouri. We are very excited. Our sages tell us that the biggest blessing for the Jewish people is peace. And we are so happy to have Mrs. Khedouri represent this idea of peace, of building bridges between communities in Bahrain and being this role model of human dignity. We are so happy and excited to have her here with us, and we look forward to give you a beautiful presentation. In honor of Mrs. Khedouri, Chazan Ben Lolo will sing a beautiful song of H.E.
And this is for you, Ms. Khedouri, and to all that you represent. Eshet Chayil mi metzah verachok mi peninim michera rabot banot asu chayil ve'at alit al kulana שקר אחר והבל היופי אישה יראת השם היא תתהלל שקר אחר והבל היופי אישה יראת השם היא תתהלל.
Send our blessings to Ms. Khedouri for continued success in all of her endeavors, and we hope you enjoy the coming presentation and see you very soon at our beautiful synagogue.
All the best.
All the best, and God bless.
Amen.
I am Sandra Meshal Alagban. On behalf of the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue of Montreal, we are proud and delighted to host this event together with this Babylonian Jewish Center in New York and the Sephardi community in London. I would like to thank my husband, Ron Meshal, who made this collaboration possible and brought our three communities together in this manner. I would also like to thank Grace Perez-Lawi, the president of our sisterhood, as well as Françoise Babilo, our office manager, for their technical assistance. I personally know many of you and would like to thank you all for joining us in welcoming our guest speaker, Her Excellency, Ms. Nancy Khedouri from the Kingdom of Bahrain. I met Nancy and her dear mother a few years ago in New York, and we've developed a nice friendship since then. I would also like to share some introduction remarks about Nancy. Nancy has been a prominent figure in Bahrain. She's a member of the Shura Council of the third legislative term since 2010. She currently sits on the Current Affairs and the National Defense and Security and Deputy Chairperson of the Youth Affairs Committee. In addition, Nancy was approved to be the official representative of the Kingdom of Bahrain at the World Jewish Congress by His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa. This incredibly accomplished woman is a historian and the author of the book From Our Beginning to Present Day, documenting the history of the Jewish settlers from 1880 to present, their culture, and their traditions in the Kingdom of Bahrain. We are very honored to have Nancy in briefing us about herself, her family, her role in the parliament, and the function of the Jewish community in the Kingdom of Bahrain, and the very recent Abraham Accord. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I have the honor to introduce to you our special guest, Her Excellency, Ms. Nancy Khedouri.
Thank you very much, and a warm good evening from my part of the world to you all. And I understand the time difference, so it's a good afternoon. It's indeed a privilege to be invited by Ronnie Meshal and Sandra, his lovely wife, to be a guest speaker. And I trust that my discussions today will be helpful to enlighten you all about the history of the community, my role as a parliamentarian, and about women's status in my country. Special thanks also to Rabbi Pinto, Cantor Ben Lolo, and Grace, who's been really dynamic with her coordination with me since this past 10 days. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to be a parliamentarian and part of the lawmaking process with my multi-faith colleagues. In Bahrain, we enjoy equality, freedom of expression, and regardless of our religious differences under the dome of Parliament, my colleagues and I strive to draft out laws to be implemented that will be fair, serving in the best interests of our country and for all citizens. We conduct healthy, open debates under the dome of Parliament. We have intensive committee meetings. We lobby with our colleagues to ensure that the voting serves in the best interest of our nation. I'm also privileged to represent my country at the World Jewish Congress, indeed a very big honor and a great responsibility. As for myself as a Bahraini of the Jewish faith, I never found my identity to be out of the norm. My Jewish tradition was taught at home to me by my parents, and I've always been highly respected in my country. I have many friends who love me and accept me for who I am. Religion never really caused a barrier between us. I've been blessed with equal opportunity. I've been able to publish a book. Being a female author, there's been no problem. And just like any ordinary citizen, regardless of our religious differences, we have rights which we enjoy. And as well, we always remember to have our duties and obligations towards our country. I will begin with just briefing you a little bit about the structure of Parliament where I serve currently. Bahrain gained its independence in 1971. So our very first National Assembly was established in 1972. And after we had a constituent assembly that submitted the final draft of the constitution, the first constitution of 1973 of my country was issued. And the parliament at the time that was set up had 30 elected members. But of course, you have to know that at that time, the right to vote was limited to Bahraini male only, not female. And they had to have reached the 20 years of age. And if they were naturalized citizens, at least 10 years should have lapsed since naturalization. And of course, anyone who was sentenced to a crime involving breach of honor or trust did not have the right to vote unless he was rehabilitated. So the first National Assembly comprised of 20 members, 8 were appointed, 12 were ministers. And they enjoyed regulatory and legislative powers, but this assembly was a very short process because in 1975, it got dissolved. Due to the council facing periods of tension, differences, because it was a unicameral system, and with one chamber, many of the members started to have fixed views. And the height of the tension was that they refused to pass the state security law of 1974, which would not give the judiciary its independence. So that is why it was a very short term. It was dissolved by the late Emir Sheikh Isa, and legislative power was given both in the hands of the Emir and the cabinet in the absence of a national council. Now, it's important to know that after a gap of 27 years, the next parliamentary elections were held in the year 2002. Sheikh Isa passed away, Allah yarhamu, in 1999. And then in 2002, we had a National Action Charter. In 2001, we had a national referendum. And in 2002, we saw a bicameral system of parliament set up because our government realized that in order for democracy to flourish and to have better reform in our country, It was important to have a bicameral system where the Shura is an Arabic word meaning consultative. So this chamber would actually act as a filter to resolve disputes. And so far to date, the bicameral system has proven very successful for my country. The Shura Council is different to the Council of Representatives in that the Council of Representatives comprises of, nowadays our chambers have 40 members, changed from the 30 that they had in the 1970s. But the Council of Representatives can be any common citizen who has just reached the age of 30 and knows how to read and write and has the basic education. Shura Council is very different. The qualifications are you have to be 35 years and above, and you also have to have certain qualifications. So you see all the specialized professions in my chamber, the doctors, the lawyers, the journalists, the writers. And it really, you have an interaction of people's opinions, and it's really trends of spectrum that you will see. And of course, each respective chamber has a chairperson, 2 deputies. We have female as deputies as well. The current Council of Representatives has a woman who's actually the chairperson. And we also have standing committees. When we convene as chambers together, we call it as a National Assembly, and we just work really for the development of our legislative structure. The actual role of the Shura Council is that we consider with our counterpart chamber the legislative matters that are submitted, bylaws of the council, we review proposals to amend constitution, but of course that has a certain requirement that you have to have amendments to the constitution proposed by a minimum of 15 members of the chamber. We look at draft laws, we look at international treaties and agreements, law decrees, etc. We also pass the annual budget, and where we also submit independent reports as committees, and we debate it under Parliament. We have many committees which really are considered the backbone of the legislative work. So everything is really cooked in the committee of the Shura Council, where the matters are related to a certain expertise of the committee. And we must participate in at least a minimum of 1 committee, and we have a choice also to have be a member of a second one. Our committees also function according to competence. We have, for example, the legislative and legal affairs. They review proposals, draft laws, just to check that they are within the provisions of the Constitution. And this committee also deals with the affairs of members, considering cases if there is a need for any membership termination or whether the immunity has to be removed. My main committee, the Foreign Affairs, Defense, National Security, our task really reviews international situations, external affairs of our country, international economic agreements. We're also concerned with matters related to the external safety and internal safety and security of the country, fighting crimes, countering terrorism, etc. Rehabilitation law for the prisons and such matters, cybercrime, etc. Economic and financial affairs deals with all the economic matters. The name is self-explanatory, and also they have the budget this year. Services Committee deals with education, health, employment, media matters, and the Public Utilities and Environment Committee relates to housing, electricity, postal services, agriculture, transportation, municipality, and environment. We also had in the last couple of years the Women and Child Affairs Committee, which started as a temporary committee, but later it got the vote to be considered as a permanent committee, specialized to review legislations for women and child affairs. This shows you the importance given to women in my country. The committee submits its opinions in any matters related to such affairs. And we also have the Youth Affairs Committee, where we we look at valid legislation related to youth. For example, we passed legislation related to the, the drinks that they have, like Red Bull and all these energy drinks, because we were having a lot of cases in the country where youth were exploiting or abusing the drink and taking it with certain medications, and they were ending up in coma in the intensive care unit. So a lot of legislation had to be reviewed. We're looking at reviewing legislation in regards to, clubs and gyms, and just to make sure they have the competent trainers there to have skilled professionals really in this field. Human Rights Committee, self-explanatory, anything that is being evaluated to see that the Human Rights Conventions ratified. Any laws passed are also within, entrusted within such consistency of the agreements. Also, we have joint committees. For example, today, last week we had the GCC Summit, the Gulf Cooperation Council Summit, that was hosted in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And we had an urgent meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs today, joint committees of the Shura Council and the Council of Representatives, the Human Rights Affairs and the Foreign Affairs. And the minister briefed us as to exactly the updates, and according to the recent treaty that was, well, not treaty, but say like the agreement that they had signed, all the countries that had attended, and the setup of future committees that will be looking into the implementation of all the points that they were agreed to at that particular summit. So sometimes we do have urgent meetings like this. We also have ad hoc committees, which is like the reply committee. At the start, every 4 years term, we have His Majesty deliver a speech at the beginning of the inauguration ceremony. And we have a temporary reply committee set up comprising of 10 or 12 members, headed by the first deputy chairperson. And once the draft reply is prepared, and it's debated in our chamber, and the corrections are made and everything is finalized and approved, this committee then is, the duty of it is kind of dissolved. We also have an Inter-Parliamentary Committee whereby each of our respective chambers of the bicameral system votes for, like, you can nominate your name to be part of it. You can be in a list of 12 or more names. And then we as the chamber, we vote for 4 of our colleagues who we feel would be the most suitable to serve in this Inter-Parliamentary Committee. And at the end, we confirm 4 names from the Shura, 4 names from the Council of Representatives, and it is headed by the chairperson of the Council of Representatives. The Shura Council is mainly a legislative role, and because we had a constitutional amendment in 2012, whereby we gave the regulatory and supervisory role solely to the Council of Elected Representatives. So it would be for the people, by the people, because we are the appointed chamber. The committee meetings, of course, we meet once, twice a week, as and when the work, it depends on the workload. Very intensive meetings, of course. We meet with government officials. We bring in, when a piece of legislation, it's very difficult to legislate because legislation just doesn't change from day to day. Legislation is there and it lasts for years and years. So we have to be very cautious before we legislate. We have taken oath, whatever is in the best interest. So before we pass a piece of legislation, we meet with the executive authority, the ministers, the officials of the government, NGOs, anybody in line of that particular expertise that would give us a thorough understanding about what we are about to debate before actually we either vote for, against, or abstain. We do weekly committee reports, and of course our sessions are held public. Everyone is welcome to come in and be seated upstairs and follow the session. But there are occasions where we have held it in camera, which is a closed door session. But this, of course, would be at the request of the government if there was something highly confidential and sensitive that nobody is allowed to listen to except us. And or at least maybe 10 members would have to request this, that it be held in camera, specifying a valid reason why they feel it should be in secrecy. And of course, our sessions are governed by the procedures where you have to have a simple majority of the 40 members present, so at least 50 members plus one. Our sessions are minuted, and the council bureau, which is the chairman, the deputies, the heads of the committees, sit and they agree every week as to what the agenda will be for the following week. So this is a brief about Parliament. I will brief you now as to the history of the Jewish community of Bahrain, but I see many familiar faces who may already be very much aware. But for those of you who are not, the dynamic Jewish community of Bahrain are all from a very historic common background. Iraq, some were from Iran and some were from India, but that was a very, very small percentage. Majority were all from Baghdad, Basra, Fallujah, and we speak the Mosul Arabic dialect at home. 1873, to be specific, was the first documented records of having a Jewish trader by the name of Nassim. He sold tobacco. 1880s onwards saw the influx of more Jewish families. Of course, the Jews of Bahrain spread their nets wide, worked in various professions, ranging from tobacco, olive oil, perfume, electronic, textiles, ready-made garments. Many owned personal properties. There were those in the record-producing business. Both my maternal and paternal grandfathers, God rest their souls, were businessmen, very well known in the market, but they were also both involved in the leasing of cinemas for a certain period of time. We also had Jewish people who were money exchangers. Some were employed as bank advisors, head cashiers. Others worked in the telecommunication company, petroleum company known as Babco. And there was also a company known as Gray Mackenzie. Some were also teachers at the public and private schools, and Jewish children also attended both the government the private school. The Jewish women worked as teachers or nurses. The most famous midwife was known, she was like a Mother Teresa. She was like, her name was Jan. She was the mother to all. Nobody cared that she was Jewish. She was of Turkish origin. Her Hebrew name was Ruth Moses. And she was much loved by everyone. Everyone called her in the Arabic dialect Yumma. When they used to see her walking on the street, they used to tell her in Arabic, Yumma wena waddich, where can I take you? All other professions for the women was like selling textiles door to door, tailoring. We had famous seamstresses, Mas'ouda Shaul, came from Iraq. She brought with her a hoop, she taught the women how to master a special design on the thob al-nashil, which is the thin muslin cloth with all the gold embroidery thread. And it was called al-naqda design. She taught them how to be independent from those days to earn their living as well. And the Jewish people really integrated well into the texture of society. There was never any discrimination or segregation. We're very, very blessed, unlike what happened to many Jewish families in other countries and the stories that we have heard that they had to flee in the darkness of night. Those who left Bahrain left at their own discretion. We can freely display symbols of our religion. If you want to wear a kippah, walk around down the road, you can. We have mezuzahs outside our door. And we have never really seen any discrimination when it comes to employment, promotion, training, loans. They've never really specified a religion for that. Even the passport doesn't even specify religion. So I hope this gives you a little bit of an insight as to how our life here is in Bahrain. We are Bahraini. We are very proud of our identity. I did publish a book entitled From Our Beginning to Present Day. This was the first edition of it. You can see the volume was only like 120 pages. And then with the help of the Muslim and Christian friends and everybody wanting to know more about the traditions and our festivals, the book became like, nearly 600 pages. And you can see the volume having increased further. So it was really very much important, I felt, to document the history, to document facts. The first book was mainly oral history. The second book was more documents. I was able to get pictures from those who were willing to share it from their albums. Many researchers were out there over the years, but not all the information was accurate. Hence, it was very important from the community to have something published that would really specify the correct facts for future future people who are interested to know about the history of our community. We do have an active coexistence. We have, His Majesty is very well known to be humane, to welcome. I don't really use the word tolerance. We as a community, we prefer to use the word, coexistence, because we really live with each other. Whether we are Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Baha'i, Buddhist, Sikh, Jewish, we live amicably. We have respect for each other. And His Majesty has a professorship chair in his name, for those of you who may not be aware, at La Sapienza University in Rome. And we set up the King Hamad Global Center for Peaceful Coexistence. And we have many students. They approach me. They use my book even as a research for their work. And they all take master's degree and doctorate degrees in coexistence, where they take the Kingdom of Bahrain as the role model for coexistence. And as we touch upon the subject matter of my book, just like to draw attention, you may have been aware of the groundbreaking Ramadan, the holy month of fasting for the Muslims, the Ramadan series Harun, which was recently the honoree of the 8th annual America Abroad Media Awards event. It was in Washington, D.C. Sadly, because of the pandemic, the cast couldn't travel there to receive their honor in person. It was all via Zoom. But the main character of Harun, of the series, was based on the profession of Jan, being a midwife, dearly loved and respected by all, as a story was illustrated in my book. The series helped spread the valuable message about the social cohesion that's always existed in the Gulf and prevailed in it was based on the 1940s era in the Gulf region. So I was really privileged to be part of the dynamic force, collaborating with the screenwriters, directors, actors, actresses, producers, helping them with a whole heart to ensure that the respective script, when it came to matters related to Judaism and Jewish character and way of life, was indeed accurate. There was a rabbi from the chief rabbi of Geneva, Dr. Ishaq Dayan, originally from Morocco, who also helped them. He speaks Arabic, and he did help them as well. He supervised a lot of matters related to the prayers that they were using in the script. And I was really proud to witness them achieving this, reaping the success of their hard work. Now I will move on to the status of women in general here in Bahrain. And I do warn you that a woman can never be lost for words when we speak about women here in the country. The Kingdom of Bahrain is known to be taking, or have been taken, pioneering steps towards empowering the woman, developing her capabilities, advancing her in society. So today, when I speak about women's status, I say women advancement. Even there is an award in the name of Her Highness Princess Sabika bint Ibrahim Al Khalifa, our First Lady, wife of His Majesty, who is President of the Supreme Council of Women. I'll explain about their role later. His Majesty, we changed the name from Women Empowerment to Award for Women Advancement. And when we talk, for example, today the Bahraini woman has really proven she's capable to stand as a qualifying partner with the Bahraini male. His Majesty is always at the forefront, leading, guiding, supporting, to ensure that we build together, hand in hand with our male counterparts, as a competitive, sustainable society. When we speak, say, about women in education, for example, the first school for girls was established in 1928. And this was a historic event, not only for Bahrain, but for the entire Gulf region, because it proved that there was leadership in the formal education for girls. There were countries at that time, in those years, that wouldn't even allow a woman to be educated. They would just say the woman's place is in the home. She doesn't have to know how to read and write and drive, and it doesn't matter. But in Bahrain, since 1928, women were able to be educated. In 1956, we had the first higher education scholarship for girls. Girls started traveling abroad to countries such as Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, United Kingdom. They studied medicine. There was a survey between 1940 and 1965, which showed that 65% of girls versus 29% of boys wanted a university education. So the families were encouraging. So you had that open-mindedness way back since all those years. Women have always been independent. We had also a Ministry of Education set up after our independence in 1971. We had also the number of female students increased significantly. Women began receiving master's degrees from foreign universities. And, education for women became really a fundamental pillar. For human development, we kind of rank quite high with some of the highest countries of the world. We had a reform project in 1999 of His Majesty once he ascended the throne. It was launched based on strengthening the foundations of our institutions and the process of law. So it was based on culture, openness, developing education. We had the Higher Council for Education set up. We had an education law also passed. And we also acceded to many international covenants and agreements. For example, the one on civil and political rights, which recognized equality between men and women. If you recall, I go back to the very start of my discussions with you all, where I mentioned that at the very beginning for the National Assembly, only male could vote. But once we had the National Action Charter and the amended Constitution, men and women could vote. So that's how women also started to come into Parliament from 2002 onwards. But I would like to also inform you that since 1919, women were allowed to vote in the municipal council elections. So women could vote for the municipal council, but not for the parliament. But after 2002, we could also participate equally for parliamentary elections. We also acceded the Arab Charter on Human Rights. We ratified it. It guaranteed full rights of women for education and stages without any discrimination. We also acceded to the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights and for disabled women in education. Not because a woman is disabled or in a wheelchair, it doesn't means that she doesn't have the right to be educated. I had a colleague of mine at the Shura Council. She was wheelchair bound, but she was very much pro laws for the disabled, for those suffering from the challenges of disability and other matters, and quite an active member of our chamber. The Kingdom of Bahrain also ranked first among countries of the world in the performance achieving the education goals for 2010, according to UNESCO. I will touch upon women and health. It must be recognized that the women in the medical sector demonstrates a strong active presence of women in society. The latest statistics show that the number of female doctors in Bahrain is 66%. It could have even increased now since the last statistic. The first female doctor graduated in 1969. We had qualified Bahraini nurses since 1941. We had assistant head nurses in 59. Nursing education began, opening the first school for nurses. And we had women being appointed as the head nurses also of schools. We had missions began in specialized nursing. In 1973, we had the first Bahraini nurse in the field of mental health specialization. And in 1978, we had the first nurse who graduated in the nursing program from the University of Baghdad. They used to always go mainly to Iraq and Lebanon. And we also had the first nurse of the Bahrain Defense Force. Today, we've also had female ministers of health. Today, our current minister is also a female. We have female doctors as frontliners with the challenges of the pandemic. And they just demonstrate their outstanding ability along with their male counterparts as doctors managing the crisis with great merit and professionalism. When it comes to women in politics, as I had mentioned, we had the amended constitution. They started voting. We had first, one of my colleagues, she was the first woman, Latifa Al-Ghoud, who made history to be the first female to be elected in the chamber. We had females in municipal councils. So women started entering government, becoming ministers, ambassadors that I had spoken and had a brief discussion with one of our participants before we started. We have had ambassadors appointed to China, to UK, female ambassadors, which doesn't make a difference. China, UK, my first cousin, we're very proud, she was our ambassador to Washington, DC. We have had a first female from the royal family who was elected president of the United Nations General Assembly. And she was the first Arab and Muslim woman to hold this position. She later became ambassador to Paris in 1999. Women were elected all over by His Majesty to serve in very high-ranking positions, even in the judicial authority, because we have three independent authorities. We've got the executive, we've got the legislative, and the judicial. So we've had female judges for the Constitutional Court. We have the leading role we have, like, for example, every year, Bahrain celebrates Bahrain Women Day on the 1st of December. And every year is devoted to a certain theme. This year, they concentrated on Bahraini women in the diplomatic field. So we're very proud. We have a Bahraini woman as an undersecretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So she's second in command at that institution. And she's the first Arab woman to reach this position in the Gulf. And as I mentioned, our female Speaker of the Council of Representatives is also demonstrating her leading role in the country. When we come to women and employment, for example, Bahraini women achieved great support all over the years from their husbands, from their brothers, from their families, to be an essential component in Bahraini society and to contribute towards its reform process. So they were motivated from the very start to work in public work. As I said, they could have been teachers in the government schools or ministries. But also they worked, our Civil Service Bureau established the Equal Opportunities Committee in 2014, which meant that any government organization would have to have an Equal Opportunities Committee set up, because it would have to be aimed at integrating the needs of women in the framework of equal opportunities to ensure she's getting equal training as her male colleague. She's paid an equal salary in her role, same as employees and beneficiaries. And they also work hand in hand with the Supreme Council for Women's team to coordinate together in accordance to see that they have rights to scholarships, career advancement, etc. So apart from also working in the government sector, private sector today, and for many years, since the 1950s, 1960s, leading families you have holding commercial registrations, leading positions. Women are chief executive officers, chairperson of a board of directors, board members of Chamber of Industry and Commerce, ranking first among Forbes Middle East high-powered, most powerful Arab women in the region. There are many, many Bahraini Arab women in general in the region whose name shine and who have made history and have proven their uniqueness and distinction. We've also had pilot officers who fly F-16s at our Defense Force, graduating from a Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst. We have females heading the National Institution for Human Rights. We also have women in the police force. Our police force was established in 1970, and it was so successful that really the state of Kuwait, when they established their police force in 2008, they came to Bahrain because Bahrain was really the pioneer of the Arab countries with their police force, women police force, and they came to them to help them and guide them in setting up their women police force. And of course, after many years of training and qualifying, female police personnel have actually worked and continued in the Ministry of Interior. Our current minister is dynamic. He gives great respect He has appointed females as assistant to the head of public security for community affairs related to women and child, has appointed females as director of community service police. And we see it really in every department that they have, something that we're very, very proud of. And in light of Bahraini women and the vision of the Kingdom of Bahrain, we have a vision which we call the Bahrain Economic Vision of 2030. It's really the long-term vision of His Majesty where we look at the paths of our national economy over a period of time. Each respective ministry works according to various flexibility and implementation of the various strategies that would lead them to this particular goal that they have set out. And really, it's to achieve the economic development for the country. And as well as I mentioned about the Supreme Council for Women, they really truly help the advancement for women. For example, today, if you have a Bahraini woman who is divorced with child, without child, who needs her alimony, who's struggling in the courts, whose cases are not being expedited, basically you have them helping the Bahraini woman, paying for her fees for the court. If she's unable to afford it, they give her a lawyer, they pay, they make sure they follow up on her cases. And this is something that they're very, very grateful for. And it gives them that additional support when they feel totally lost and abandoned or don't know what to do, feeling maybe the weaker half of the marriage where you know, that they're having issues. In fact, we toured, we had a personal tour of the Reconciliation Center. They changed the courts to a beautiful area. And this was actually pushed by the Supreme Council for Women. It's in a beautiful area. And it actually allows families undergoing divorces or reconciliation to meet there with their children. And the rooms are beautiful with pastel colors and very calming. So even if you don't want to reconcile, I think you have no option. You're just going to reconcile because it's such a beautiful ambiance. And it's a really gives the family that personal privacy, because when you go to the other courts of the main areas in the country, in the diplomatic area, you know, sometimes they shout out the name and there's no privacy and everybody knows whose case is coming. This particular building was kept aside for these particular family situations. So basically, the volume of international praise that Bahrain enjoys in all fields is really a source of pride. You know, when a woman is a leader, it changes her. But when many women lead, it definitely changes politics and how matters are resolved. And I was also asked by Ronnie and Sandra if I could just touch upon a little bit towards my conclusion about the recent Abraham Accord. So I told them with pleasure. And of course, the signing of this accord was met with great excitement. It was indeed a great surprise. I suppose the committee never really saw it coming in 2020, but I think amidst the pandemic, this was something that brought a lot of happiness, you know, for the year, because it was a very, very difficult, challenging year for everyone. And this really brought in a lot of hope. Being united together will bring in strength, stability, prosperity to the region. As I mentioned, King Hamad is always praised for embracing religious diversity. His vision of peace is quoted, if you Google search the Bahrain Declaration. It starts and it ends, it concludes with a quote from His Majesty, faith illuminates our path to peace. And there is also another conclusion of a couple of lines at the end of it. If you just Google also the Bahrain Declaration, this is something that's always distributed by the King Hamad Global Center. And, you know, we must also remember that the state of Israel was never a threat to the Gulf countries. And indeed, 7 decades of lost opportunity is a long time. Imagine what they could have done in 70 years, you know, trade-wise, diplomatic-wise, relation-wise. But as the saying goes, everything happens in Hashem's time. And what is written, it was written to happen in September 15th of 2020. In fact, it was my cousin's, one of my paternal cousins' birthday on that day. So it was really a historic occasion. And I tell you, the expectations from both sides, just like any two countries starting diplomatic relations, they will benefit. You have a new trading partner. The Kingdom of Bahrain has always been the center of international commerce. Jewish traders played significant role in building the economy. Since years ago, you had French pearl traders coming all the way to Bahrain, via Bahrain, going to India. So Bahrain was always seen as a hub. I am sure that now, once the respective memoranda of understanding has been signed with the State of Israel, you will see more joint collaboration in many, many fields. You will have investment summits. We're expecting many tourists coming and coming to visit, and also from Bahrain, also visiting Israel, embracing each other's heritage and culture, visiting landmark sites. We just really look forward to this being the beginning of a great chapter. And I really hope that the year 2021 is a healthy, happy, prosperous year for humanity, because 2020 was indeed very difficult. And as I conclude now, I trust that my discussions have enlightened you all. I apologize if I have prolonged a little bit, but I really wanted to satisfy the understanding as to different subject matters. And I really look forward to you all visiting Bahrain, letting us know when you're coming, and guiding you as to where to visit, what to see. As I mentioned before, I noticed some people here from the Swery family who lived here before, and they sent me a black and white photo of their house, and I went actually to the area to find it for them, and we managed to find a similar building, and it turned out to be the one that was still there. And it was really, really nice. So they're looking forward to coming and touring and visiting, and to relive that, whether they were living here before and left, to relive their childhood memories, whether they heard about Bahrain from their grandparents and parents and would like to see the place of their birth. That's also something that I'm sure everyone is looking forward to. And rest assured that we have no anti-Semitism. Bahrain is an open country, and you will really enjoy your time here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Her Excellency, Nancy Khedouri.
Just Nancy, just please address me as Nancy.
In order to ask questions, you either raise your hand physically or click on the reaction icon at the bottom right-hand corner of your device, or you could text it. Okay, so my name is Grace Perez-Lawi. I'm the Sisterhood President of the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue. Mr. David Dangour, who happens to be my cousin from London, England, from the Spanish and
David. Hi, David.
Sephardic community. Go ahead, David, and ask your question, then I'll...
Thank you very much to the Montreal community for organizing this international event with you. And in fact, from the international nature of today's audience, logged in from 3 different continents, it's clear that you're of great interest around the world. And I'd like to hear a little bit about your own personal situation in that respect. And if you could tell us a little about the different international communities you have interacted with, both Jewish and non-Jewish, and what was the most interesting thing to them about you. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Thank you for your question. Well, really, as I mentioned at the very beginning of my talk, that, my identity being Bahraini of the Jewish faith never really posed any problem. People are usually fascinated and they say, oh, you've got a Jewish community living in Bahrain. How do you live? How do you survive? Do you see, is there any anti-Semitism? And I tell them that we do live in a very amicable environment. It's really a great blessing. And this is mainly due to the open-mindedness of our leadership, because it's our leadership who have embraced communities of different faiths. As you mentioned, who have I interacted with all my life? I've gone to school with Muslim and Christian and Hindu and Baha'i students, and we have always interacted and respected each other. And we've respected each other's traditions, festivals. We've been there for each other through the hard times first, before the happy times. And we've really never seen anything out of the norm. I suppose for people living abroad where their countries may have anti-Semitism or any hardships when it comes to this kind of coexistence. I think they're always very impressed to see the Kingdom of Bahrain being or setting a leading example in this way of life and modern living. I hope this has clarified this for you. And even in school, you know, for example, as a Jewish student, we took Holy Quran, you know, as a subject. And I used to gain 100% in Holy Quran recitation. And my Muslim friends used to fail. They used to get 50%, 60%, barely there. So I remember my teacher used to always tell them, you know, shame on you, you know, be like the Jewish student. The Jewish student gets 100% and you're Muslim, you're failing. So, you know, it's just that I think, I don't know, the Jewish students were known to be quite clever, very academic, you know, and as a community, we've always been very much to ourselves. We've been non-political, like we don't go out and protest in the streets, or, you know, we've been very law-abiding citizens. And of course, you abide the law and, you know, you are respected. And I think that is something that we're very principled in, being law-abiding, honoring and respecting and being grateful for being welcomed by the Al Khalifa ruling family as Jewish people, and, you know, living here and just, you know, feeling blessed.
Thank you, Nancy.
Our next question is coming from New York, Shireen Alagban.
I hope it's an easy question.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you so much. It was an excellent presentation. I'm so happy that this Zoom took place. I learned a lot from your presentation.
Thank you.
I would like to salute you and His Majesty King Hamad, Sheikh Hamad, if I'm not mispronouncing it. And I know that Bahrain is very protective of its Jewish community. It's beautiful to see that you're allowed such freedom and to be active politically. I hope that we will see you as in the role of ambassador very soon. You're a very capable young lady, and it's really, you're a source of pride for all Iraqi Jews and for all Jews worldwide, I think, especially coming from a Muslim country. So thank you very much. It's beautiful seeing you, and I hope you can come and visit us soon.
Mizrat Hashem, thank you so much for your kind words. And yes, it is indeed a privilege to serve here in my country, and whatever His Majesty decides and appoints, you know, these decisions always lies with the higher authorities. And anyone in Bahrain as a Bahraini is always happy to serve the country and the leadership in any role.
Well, our salutations and our greetings to you and your kingdom and your king.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Beautiful.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you for coordinating this. You were the dynamic force as well behind the scene.
It's Sandra and Ronnie.
You, Sandra, Ronnie, Grace, all of you, you ganged up on me just to make this possible.
I'm very sorry that a lot of people were unable to join the Zoom call. I keep getting text messages. I mean, 100 people is very impressive, Nancy.
Thank you very much. I mean, I'm very thankful for everyone who attended and also who wanted to attend but couldn't. I mean, I know these technical glitches are beyond one's control, but really thankful for taking time out of your weekend and sharing and making time to listen to these discussions.
We wouldn't miss it for the world, Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best to you and Happy New Year in regards to your mom.
I will. Thank you very much.
Nancy, we have a question in the chat from Chris.
Yes.
I'm afraid to mispronounce the last name, Al Kajak. Nancy, you speak about the rights of women in Bahrain. Is that limited to only the local Bahraini women, or does that include expatriate women?
Good question. Thank you for your question, Claire Al-Khaja. Well, it's really related to all women who live here. Of course, our local laws, you know, some of the laws that we pass in legislation, you know, could be related to the Bahraini nationals. But in general, the women advancement that we have, or we encourage as well, we have women expatriates working in or being recruited in ministries. They're being recruited in Bahraini and non-Bahraini, even in the private sector. They hold very good positions. They're executive office directors. They're from India. They're from Philippines. They're from many, many countries of the world, from Europe, from England, and they're also practice their freedom here as women. They can drive. They can go to the beach. You know. So in general, women who live in Bahrain, whether they are Bahraini or non-Bahraini, have their rights there. But there are certain laws, let us say, for example, when it comes to housing, for example, that is maybe restricted to the Bahraini national women who would be on a list for a housing ministry of housing plot because she is a local. But even if you're not local and you're an expatriate, but you still have the freedom here to work, to live. You can go to the bar and have a drink if you want. You can go, you know, anywhere you want. So you do have that freedom. And those also we have, sorry, I just also like to add that you also have some non-Bahraini women married to Bahraini men. So their spouses are also Bahraini, or even vice versa. You have some Bahraini women married to non-Bahrainis, and they just enjoy their freedom here.
Thank you, Nancy. We have another question from Claire. Is the Shura Council considered to be the upper house or the lower house of Parliament?
We were considered, yes, to be the upper house, equivalent to the House of Lords. I think in my assumption, when we gave over the power in the recent amendment of 2012 for the Council of Representatives to have the executive and supervisory role, I understand that they would be now the higher chamber.
Thank you, Nancy. We have another question from Hazan Daniel Ben Lolo from the Spanish and Portuguese in Montreal. How many functioning synagogues are there in Bahrain, and are they easily accessible and protected?
Thank you for your question, Daniel. We only have one synagogue. In fact, Bahrain was the first Gulf country to ever have a synagogue in the region. It was operational for many years until 1948, when, of course, the community dwindled and there was no minyan, the quorum for the prayers. And, of course, a lot of the Jewish families moved out from Manama, the actual market area where they used to live, to other parts of the country. So currently we still have that one synagogue. Who knows, maybe in future you could have a hall room taken in one of the hotels to be an active synagogue if you have many tourists coming. Who knows what the future holds. But currently the one synagogue that we have is under renovation. And to my understanding from the president of the community, it is due to be inaugurated by Purim, by end of February.
Thank you, Nancy. We have a question from Facebook Live. Can you discuss the country's position on Israel? And this is from Lana Ini from New York.
Thank you for your question, Lana. Well, of course, Bahrain is known to be respectful towards all countries of the world. I mean, even before the Abraham Accord was signed, the Kingdom of Bahrain always had respect for the State of Israel. You know, our former Foreign Minister of Foreign Affairs in his Twitter accounts would always say, Israel has a right to exist. We fully accept Israel. So there has never been any, you know, how to say, any ill feeling towards the State of Israel or towards Jewish people in general. And of course, now that we've had the Abraham Accord signed, you have with the UAE and you have with the Kingdom of Bahrain and many, many other countries. The Kingdom of Bahrain, of course, is definitely, you don't come and you sign such an accord if you're not serious about it. So it's like when you sign such an open relation, an open peace and everything, it's really going to be, I understand, fully committed, with full commitment from either side.
Thank you, Nancy. We have Sandra Michal from Montreal who would like to ask you a question.
Sure.
Sandra, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay. I just want to know, with the Abraham Accord, what are the plans of the collaboration with Israel in terms of high tech or medical or agriculture? Anything planned in the future together, collaborating in these areas?
A good question. Well, of course, you know, the respective memoranda of understanding have been signed and maybe more are to follow. Such matters, I'm sure, will be between the respective Ministry of Foreign Affairs of both countries in accordance with the respective private sectors, because you're also going to have business summits. As I mentioned, we look forward to such investment summits coming up. You're going to have private sector, B2B meetings, and I'm sure companies will be looking and sourcing each other and wanting to network and wanting to collaborate with each other in both the private and the public sectors. I understand that, you know, when two countries just start to open relations, matters do take a little bit of time, which is understandable. I know they were looking forward to starting the flights as well on January 7, but maybe because of the lockdown also, it might delay until Israel, stops their lockdown. But of course, Israel is known to have expertise in many areas. So as you mentioned, high-tech, agriculture, etc. And I am sure that during the initial meeting that they have, if you were following the news at the time, the MOU was signed in the Kingdom of Bahrain as well, with our delegation also going to the State of Israel. There were the high-ranking officials of the government sectors also signing such initial agreements. And I'm sure there's been a collaboration and it will continue in more depth. And at the same time, we've also had private sector companies approach us from the State of Israel. I know they're in talks with the Economic Development Board, and with also other private sector investors that they know. And I'm sure there will be very good collaboration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. We have a question from Facebook Live again, from Jeanette Dalal Daniel. Can you please ask her if her community can do anything to save the Iraqi Jewish holy places such as Heskel, Prophet, Tomb in Kefel?
The screen actually froze, Grace, while you were speaking, so I didn't hear the full question. Forgive me.
She said to ask you if your community can do anything to save the Iraqi Jewish holy places such as Heskel, Prophet, Tomb in Kefel.
This, of course, is a matter I think would have to be, say, discussed with the higher authorities in the country. For example, you know, sites like these and holy sites, I'm sure come under the umbrella of the cultural and antiquities side, you know, under that kind of umbrella. But I'm sure you know, I think if the authorities were approached by certain other governments and other things, I mean, I think this is a matter for a government matter, say, to look into as well.
Thank you, Nancy. The next question is from Claire. You pronounced her last name much better than me. Al-Khaja. Al-Khaja?
Yes.
Thank you. Does the upper house and lower house of the parliament system in Bahrain have more power than the individual ministries? And do these parliamentary divisions act as watchdogs as per se over the individual ministries in order to ensure that all ministries act accordingly? And do the ministries have individual constitutions as parameters that they must work within?
Okay, I'm just noting a few points. So I hope I cover everything. If I don't, just remind me. So it's a very good question. So basically, yes, our legislative authority, of course, as I said, we have the independent authorities. So yes, when you pass legislation, it's very, very important to be very accurate. And because what happens is, when it comes to the ministries are under the umbrella of the umbrella of the executive authority. So we implement the laws, they implement the laws, we pass the laws, and yes, we are the watchdog. They do supervise and they scrutinize, and they've got the power also to impeach ministers. We also see, for example, ministries do have their respective bylaws. I mean, not everything you can pass as a legislation under the dome of Parliament. There must be some flexibility also given to the respective executive authority that would have to have their own bylaws and have their own way, because they deal as well with the day-to-day handling of matters. So they do have what they call internal bylaws, which they follow. But overall, yes, they have to adhere to the national law that is passed by our National Assembly, in addition to their bylaws. And of course, the minister has the power to change the bylaws of his organization. What was the last part of the question, please, if you can remind me? The last part about...
the watchdogs, as per se, over the individual ministries in order to ensure that all ministries act accordingly, and do the ministries have individual constitutions as parameters that they must work within?
Yeah, that's what I mentioned about the bylaws as well. Definitely, definitely. And of course, we must remember that here in the Kingdom of Bahrain, the main priority is always the citizen. Definitely. Anything, you know, of course, there's always challenges for any country, budget issues, challenges of deficits, etc. But at the end of the day, His Majesty is very cautious, and always, and our late Prime Minister and our current Prime Minister as well, our Crown Prince, always ensuring and always, how to say, like reminding the ministers, reminding them that in general, that everything always you have to serve the citizen, make sure the citizen is not affected in any way, make sure their work is processed in a very smooth manner. So really, we always have follow-up committees, like now when Claire Al-Khaja asked about the watchdogs, etc. Like, for example, the Council of Representatives will set up investigation committees to scrutinize each and every problem that they may hear or from their constituents if they have, and they really look into that. So it's really a very, it's a lovely role to have the trust of the people, and to also ensure at the end of the day, what do you want? You want a good result, that their matter is resolved as well.
Thank you, Nancy. I think we have one last question before we conclude. Frederick Ezekiel. You have to unmute yourself, Frederick.
Yeah. Nancy, I'm very excited about your talk. I was born in Baghdad, and my uncle, Chief Rabbi, has the same name you have, Hoc Khedouri. And I went to the Alliance School, and I came to America in 1948. My question to you is the Arabic you speak in Bahrain? By the way, I never heard of the Jewish community in Bahrain. This is all news to me. The question is, do you have the same dialect, the Judeo-Arabic? تحكي العربي مثل اليهود ببغداد ولا مثل الإسلام؟
وأنا أحكي مثلك بعد. هاي العربي العراقي الموصلي مثل أجدادي يحكون، وأبوي الله يرحمه كان يحكي، وأمي الله يحفظها. يعني إحنا اليهود البحرين نحكي هيك العربي العراقي. بس يعني in the day-to-day government work and in general with the general Bahraini Muslim community, we speak the local dialect, which is Arabic, but again it has a different pronunciation. Like you have the Egyptian, Lebanese, Syrian Arabic, Moroccan. They all, it's all Arabic, but it's just how you pronounce the words. So in Bahrain, like in the Iraqi way, I'm talking to you. أقول لك أشلونك. يعني أشلونك. Yeah. In the Bahraini dialect, the local Bahraini dialect, we will say شخبارك شلونك شلون العائلة شلون الأهل. يعني in the Gulf, it's a Gulf dialect as we call it. But even in the Gulf, the dialect of a Saudi national, you will notice is very different from the dialect of a Bahraini national, to a Kuwaiti national, to an Emirati national. So it's just those dialects, but at the end of the day, it's Arabic. But I'm so happy to have found a cousin, and I heard of Hoc Khedouri, God rest his soul. And speaking of the Alliance, my late paternal grandfather, Yusuf Khedouri, Joseph Eliyahu Khedouri, his late mother was from Austria, and I knew the story that her father actually went to open the school, the Alliance School in Baghdad, all those years ago. That's what I grew up knowing, and that's how she met then her partner, and they got married, etc. So my grandfather's mother was actually Austrian.
Oh,
yeah.
I was going to say, Khedouri what does Khedouri mean? Do you know the Arabic definition?
If you know, you tell me, enlighten me more, because I know the word khudr means yani green, khudr,
green.
I don't know if it's taken from that, but if you have any other meaning for it, please enlighten me.
Where do you live now?
I live أنا أعيش في البحرين. I live in Bahrain.
Bahrain. Which city? Which?
In the capital governorate in Manama, in Bahrain.
وين تعلمت الإنجليزي؟
I went to a Roman Catholic convent school, the Sacred Heart School. So my education was all, the curriculum was in English from the board of Oxford and Cambridge. And I also went to London for higher education. So always my summer all was spent in London, Ireland. And that's, I don't really have an accent. Sometimes it goes American English, English, I don't know, British English. So, but we have very good schools here, and you know, it's good.
Okay, I'm proud to listen to you. Appreciate it very much.
But you didn't tell me the meaning of Khedouri. You didn't tell me the meaning of our surname.
No, I mean green. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, Khadr and Khedouri. I think that's what it means.
Inshallah, Santak Khadra.
Ashkarak.
Nancy, is it okay if we have one quick question?
Sure, I have time. If the attendees have time, I'm very happy to enlighten everyone. Fire away.
It's from Facebook Live. It's Rachel Gabai, a member of the Spanish and Portuguese in Montreal. She asks, how observant is the Jewish community in Bahrain?
Okay, good question. The Jewish community of Bahrain are what we call traditional. We're conservative, but we're not very extreme. Some of us, we choose, say, not to work on Shabbat. Some of us maybe drive on Shabbat. We have those who keep a very strict kosher home. We have those not so strict. So this is how it is. This is how it's always been, you know.
Thank you, Nancy. Sandra?
But as I mentioned as well, because our attendee may not have heard our earlier discussions when we had tuned in before we officially started, you know, as I mentioned that the Ritz-Carlton Hotel here was the first hotel to kosher somebody and they're very observant or they're very kosher. They do have kosher food now available in the country, and more hotels also are following in those footsteps.
Thank you so much for a very interesting and enlightening presentation. And we appreciate you taking the time to join us in this with your very busy schedule. I am sure everyone was very delighted to hear you and to get to know you. We're very proud of you and we wish you all the best.
Thank you,
and
you too.
Also, I'd like to mention, I encourage everyone to get a copy of Nancy's book. I have two that she was nice enough to give me the last time I saw her in New York. And I enjoyed reading it tremendously. And I hope that if they want to order your book, they can maybe contact us and we'll let you know. How do they
currently, thanks for bringing this up. Actually, currently the books were out of publication because it kind of like was sold out. But they are in the process of being back in print and very soon. So either the president of the community can be contacted about it. When you visit Bahrain, there'll be some copies as well in the shop near the synagogue. There is a bookshop Jeshen Mal available. Otherwise, until such time the copy is available, I'm also very happy to email to you the PDF link for those of you who would like to read, but that's not for circulation, please. It's just for your personal pleasure reading. I'm very happy to share that if somebody would like to immediately read that, or if they have the patience to wait until the actual fully hard copy is actually back in print. which might be just another 2 weeks or so, we can then arrange with the president of the community to send some copies to you to circulate to whoever would like. So, and I can even more than happy to autograph the copies as well for the individual names, with pleasure.
That would be wonderful. So for everyone, maybe we will email everyone once we have the copies, or if anybody would like to get a copy, you can let your community center or our Spanish and Portuguese synagogue know. And in conclusion, I have to say we were very delighted to have you. We're very, very honored. And now I'd like to invite Charles Shemi, the president of the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue, to say a few words in conclusion. And thank you so much, Nancy, for everything.
Before Charles goes on, I want to tell you, Nancy, we're so proud of you, an Iraqi Jew who's a minister in Bahrain. We're very proud of you. Great Parliamentary in the community of London and New York, and I hope we'll be able to do this again. And again, thank you so much for all your, it was a great, great, great lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ronnie and Sandra and everyone really for this opportunity. And please, if it was recorded, I mean, I would very much appreciate also the recorded link, which perhaps you can also circulate to those who weren't so lucky enough to have been able to Zoom in with us tonight.
Right, so now Charles, please.
Nancy, that was amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On behalf of the the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue in Montreal, I would like to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for taking time to give us insight on the Abraham Accords and the Bahraini way of life. The information you gave us is invaluable. We wouldn't have obtained this information from any other source. We are very grateful for that. And as everybody else said, as a fellow Iraqi Jew, I am so proud of you and your achievement as a Jewish member in the Parliament of Bahrain. There's a lot of things I didn't know about Bahrain, and one of them is that Bahrain is obviously a leader in women's equality. With these accords, I see a light at the end of the tunnel. It is a real possibility that we may see a comprehensive peace treaty amongst many of our Middle Eastern countries. I can only imagine what could be achieved with peace in the Middle East. I would also like to thank Sandra and Ronnie and Grace Lowry for putting this beautiful conference together. I know that you sacrificed many hours of your time to put this event together, and thank you so much. And I would also like to thank Ronnie for his initiative to connect the Babylonian Jewish Center in New York and the Sephardi community in London. It's amazing that even during a global crisis, we are able to take advantage of the technology. We can get together from all corners of the world. I would like to thank my friends from New York and London for participating. It was a great event. And finally, I would like to thank Rabbi Pinto and Cantor Ben Lolo for displaying their video and our beloved synagogue. Thank you again, Nancy. I hope to meet you in person one day, and wishing all of you the best. Thank you.
Thank you to you all as well. Thank you so much. I see more family here. Auntie Munira, A.B. Corrine, Michael, love you all. And thank you for making the time also to be here. And please, I mean, if anyone is due to come to Bahrain to visit, you'd like to meet with members of the community, for, you know, as and when agenda permits, we're more than happy to meet with you. You may take our numbers from Ronnie and Sandra or Shirley and let us know when you're coming. Should you even be visiting the region or coming to Bahrain and you need any help while you're here, you have a sister here in Bahrain, that anything I can do to help you, please don't hesitate to contact me.
Thank you, everyone. Please unmute yourselves and applaud and say what you want to say.
Thank you, Nancy. Wonderful. We're very proud of you.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you.
Nancy, Nancy, we love you. We love you. God bless you.
Bye.
God bless you.
Bless you.
Nancy for ambassador.
Come on, Nancy.
Thank you all.
Bye, Nancy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. God bless you.
Thank you, Nancy. Bye. Bye.
Bye, Nancy. Thank you very much.
Bye,
Hope to see you soon.
Bizrat Hashem. Thank you.
مع السلامة يا نانسي.
Bye. Take care.
مع السلامة نانسي. باي باي.
الله يحفظكم. باي باي. Thank you.